Hello, welcome back to the adventure, my friends. It is I, the Irish Wolf, your champion, the one true Emperor of Ireland. The last time we spoke, we had just sieged Galway and taken it right from under the noses of the British Empire. And in doing so, we now control half of Ireland itself, with the other half still needing to be liberated though, of course. Now, last episode, we made the heads really roll with all the British lords that we came across by executing them, of course, and now everyone seems to think we're a little bit devious and a bit of a butcher. Oh well, that's a shame. Our conquest to free our country is worth more than our reputation. Speaking of which, as we were going out to try and hunt down our enemies, we came across a very large group of enemies that were attacking some of our villagers. I'm afraid that the odds were not exactly in our favor here, but nonetheless we would have to try to protect our people with our very lives. For a true emperor is only as strong as those that he governs. I do very much fear the odds of this battle though, as the majority of our reinforcements are made up of a few militiamen and mostly villagers, while the majority of the enemy's army is made up solely of experienced soldiers and veterans. Nonetheless though, we are not ones to back down from a fight, even when the odds are against us. Given the fact that we were completely outnumbered, I thought it might be best to swap out my rifle for a blunderbuss, and as you can see, every volley that I threw their way was more than successful. All the glass and rocks that I could scrape up to throw down the barrel of this weapon really seemed to come in handy. But the downside to the weapon is I had to get up close and personal to use it, and eventually this would end up costing me my health. I was easily shot off my mount, unfortunately, and now the battle would be up to my soldiers. They would endure a long and harsh, rainy, muddy, muggy battle, and though they were courageous and brave, they were defeated. Many men died here today, and many villagers were captured. We had failed them. Our enemies were victorious, and they had absolutely humiliated me here on this battlefield. They didn't even have the common decency to give me the sweet relief of death. They decided to take me prisoner instead, a foolish move on their part, and exactly what I truly wanted. As I sat in the dungeon at York, I had plenty of time to think of an escape plan as well as battle plans and strategies. Eventually, I would make my daring escape from the city and begin making the very long trek all the way back home, all the while trying to avoid any British armies, and just as well attempting to raise an army of my own from local villages as I began making my way towards London. The city was in rebellion and thus loyal to no other nation. Perhaps I could find some solace here after all, and maybe even some mercenaries to help me out on my journey. As we began to make our way back towards Ireland, we would eventually come upon a bandit hideout just outside of Pembroke. While we couldn't just leave them here, they would terrorize the town folk nearby, and also clearing out a bandit camp might be just what I needed to a little bit of a confidence boost, if you will. Under the cover of night, we would sneak in, though I didn't plan on doing anything quiet here, as you can see with my weapon choice once more. Though at least for the first little bit here, as we're creeping up through the snow, I didn't want to lose the element of surprise just yet. As I began to execute some bandits with my axe, things got a little bit louder though. Yes, nothing like some sloppy bandit murders to get the old blood pumping once more. Always makes me reminisce about the old days. Good times. Eventually, the bandit leader would come out and he wanted to challenge me to a duel, yada yada, you know how this part goes. We would easily end up defeating the bandit captain alongside his pathetic little pitiful men, and after doing so and ensuring that the surrounding areas were safe for any villagers who may be traveling, we would continue the trek towards Pembroke, where in a nearby village we would come upon Owain and Sven, who had both raised some pretty mighty armies for the war. I was extremely tickled to see and to catch up with Sven, but I was even more so excited to see his massive army after such a long trek with only a few troops. I would take command of many of his soldiers so that they may help me with my conquering of our great nation, but I would also leave him plenty as well to ensure he can still protect the city. Whereas earlier I had very little hope we would even be able to get our army back up off the ground this episode, let alone take any cities or castles. With this many soldiers, we might just stand a chance at taking Waterford. It was still quite a long shot, as we did outnumber the garrison of the city. The garrison had many experienced soldiers, soldiers while our ranks were filled with continental militiamen. Nevertheless, we would begin a siege of the city. Day after day, a grueling process, but our efforts would pay off when I realized that we had cracked both walls of the city with our cannons. Now is truly the time to strike. We had been defeated here once before with the forces of France, but today we stand on our own, and our defeat will not come. With 2 gaping holes inside the city walls, there would be nothing they could do to stop us from coming right in and taking it. I have the utmost faith in my men, and I am confident in their abilities and in the Irish fighting spirit. Bravery runs through our veins, baby. Even I was surprised with how accurate my shots were, but then I realized that I had brought my blunderbuss once more instead of my rifle. Nevertheless, it was the perfect weapon for protecting our troops as they began to infiltrate the city through the massive cracks in the walls, just as well as some crowd control when we ourselves decided to delve into these massive cracks, causing more than massive damage, gargantuan, one might even say. As our troops began to flood throughout the city streets, they would meet a fierce resistance. Waterford had been under the control of the British and their king for a very long time. Driving them out of this city was like pulling a rotten tree out of the ground by its roots. Possible, yes, but very, very difficult and extremely dirty work. As the battle raged on throughout the night, reinforcements had finally arrived. It would seem that Owain and his men have arrived in Ireland to try and back us up. I knew we could trust that cutthroat mercenary. With their arrival, our enemies would begin making a retreat further into the city to hide within the keep. But by the time that dawn had broke, we were victorious, and Waterford had been liberated. Finally, the city would join the others in its rightful place under the Irish Empire, and its people finally free from subjugation and oppression. To celebrate, we would actually host festivals and games for the coming weeks, something that is sure to put a smile on the faces of all the citizens, I'm sure. Something else I believe will make them quite happy is their safety, so I've decided to donate about half or so of my army to the city's garrison to ensure that they are properly protected. Now, since our empire is becoming a true Irish empire, I've decided to get myself some proper head attire, a crown that is truly and honestly befitting of an emperor. May our enemies and the other world leaders fall to their knees in envy and jealousy. For my more formal street apparel, I decided to go with something a little bit less intimidating, if you will, but still befitting a dapper Irish kingly man such as myself. Now with the proper attire, I could actually walk through the streets of Waterford itself. These fine folks were very resilient, already rebuilding after the damage from the battle. I was quite proud of myself to think that I'd come from nothing, a simple Irish farm boy. And look at me now, look at all that we've accomplished. I found the crown of Ireland in the gutter. I picked it up with my sword, and the people put it atop my head. Nevertheless, though, there is still much work to be done, as we have a significant portion of Ireland to continue liberating. We had better get busy, for liberty and freedom wait for no one. They must be taken, and take them we shall, as we drive our enemies away from our lands. I've begun to notice a bit of a problem with the British lords. Every time we kill one, they seem to put another back in their place. Obviously that does make sense, I'll say, but it makes it quite hard to keep them down. Nevertheless, the conquest must continue. Even if they are like a hydra, every time I cut off one head, 2 more grow back in its place. Whether it be the mercenaries that the British have begun to hire to try and fend us off, or their actual lords themselves, like Heather here. Speaking of cutting off heads, they all believe me to be a butcher, but I see myself as a revolutionary. But I'll play the part for them. I'll be the monster they want to make me out to be. Let them whisper my name in fear down the city streets. Let them all know that in the tree lines, in the darkness, beyond the light of their villages and cities, the Irish wolf lurks. Each of my victories brings me great honor, and brings more fear to my enemies, especially those who have known of me for a long time, like Lord Lewis here. here. He and I, just as Arthur and I have shared many a battlefield together during my service to the French. But old boy, just as it was with Arthur, this shall be the last that we share together, I'm afraid. This time around, the victor takes all, and I had absolutely no intentions on losing this battle here today. Louis, the absolute buffoon that he was, would have his riflemen in a very dense formation, making it quite easy for me to hit them all at once with my blunderbuss. Those unlucky enough to not have their torsos eviscerated by my scatter shot would be picked off by my mighty axe, and in the end, just as all that had came before, they too would fall. Ah, Louis, your loyalty to your king is so admirable, and your service even more so. Perhaps now you can serve him as a guardian angel. A few days later, I had received word that my wife had raised quite the army here at Pembroke. I would stop in and check on the city, as well as the governor, Nicholas, of course, but I would also speak with my wife and take her into my party, along with her army itself. With our combined might, we would end up having an army of 320 men strong. Nothing to shrug off like it's, well, nothing, but not exactly what we were hoping for we had much bigger plans. Plans so big, in fact, that we would need to travel back to Ireland and recruit all of our armies into one gigantic force. We would eventually stumble upon Owain, who had an army of similar size, as well as Finn, who had an army of similar size as well. And with their two armies combined with our own, we had an absolutely gargantuan force. 1,220 Irish soldiers. An army of this size is sure to put us in crippling debt in terms of food and also in terms of our finances. But with an army of this size, we could also take Dublin. The garrison and militia forces of Dublin rivaled even our own army, with it being over 1,000. This would be far from easy. But throughout our time and our legacy here, we're not known for taking on easy tasks now, are we? The brutal siege of Dublin would go on for many a day, replacing our cannons as they fired down upon them, cracking them. But eventually, we would open up two large holes in the city walls, making it quite easy for us to make our way through. Our beautiful capital city waiting to be liberated from its occupation, waiting to be taken by its true rightful owners, the ancestors of those who built it. I was grateful to be here today for the opportunity to take back my capital city, and I was even more grateful that all the companions I had made along the way were with me, minus Nicholas, of course. Owain on the cannons, Finn pushing the battering ram, and my beautiful wife would be leading many an Irish peasant who were more than eager to shed blood for their freedom. This is it, my friends. All that we've ever worked for, every road that we took, every battle that we were a part of, all the blood that we've shed, every single penny that we have spent, it all led to this. Everything that we've dreamed it would be. And so it begins. This would be the largest and most dangerous battle that we have ever been a part of, let alone commanded ourselves. And because of that, I would try to hang back and guide the troops as much as possible. And with my command, they would begin infiltrating the city itself through the large gaping holes that we had made with our cannons. With my wife at the helm of this battalion, I have the utmost faith and confidence in them. Godspeed, gentlemen. While assisting with commanding the troops, I came upon the noble named John, and he fell quite easily, though I would have to move away from the city walls quite swiftly as all of their riflemen were firing at me. As more and more of our troops began to pour into the front line, I would have to take command of them as my wife had already led her troops throughout the city. I would do my best to protect these men with all I had at my disposal. But as we began to enter the city, a cannon round exploded at my feet and knocked me unconscious. Even without my leadership on the battlefield, though, our brave men and women would continue pushing forward. My wife, Owain, and Sven would have to lead our troops for now. An easy but necessary task for them, of course. I am ever so glad that we were able to get everyone together for this battle, otherwise we very well would have lost Dublin. But after countless hours of fighting, eventually we were victorious. Dublin had finally been liberated and was finally back in the hands of a true Irishman, and finally under the governance of a true and honest Irish empire. We did it, my friends. We actually did it. We have liberated our beautiful Emerald Isle. My life's goal has finally been completed, and our mission a complete success, though there are still a few loose strings that need to be tied. Sven has been with us since the very beginning. He was and still is our very first true ally, and he has stuck with us every step of the way, and for that I wish to reward him. I have allowed him to create his very own clan. This empire shall be governed by a two-party system of two separate clans, but we are still one nation, of course. I would also end up giving Sven governance over Galway, as well as all the villagers and their citizens within the domain of the city. Dublin, of course, with its recent liberation, shall be our capital city, and we could finally take a stroll through these streets, without having cannon and musket balls fired towards our heads, of course. Ah, finally, my love. We did it. I'm proud of us. I'm proud of me. And you, of course. As I arrived in the city, peasants would quite literally begin to dance as I walked by, a form of flattery and appreciation, no doubt. To think that all of this could be accomplished by a simple Irish lad like myself, growing up in the countryside, I never thought this possible. But it turns out dreams really do come true, don't they? God, it feels good to be the Emperor, especially over a free and newly liberated new nation. My ancestors are surely smiling down upon my tender head. Ah, yes indeed, we have truly done it. Wait a minute! We can't end it just yet, we're still at war! Sure, we took Ireland, but the battles aren't over. And besides, that monstrous King William has a laundry list of sins that he has to pay for. This ends when I have his head. I'm afraid that our little skirmish when liberating Dublin has left us a bit injured though, so we would need to stay here so that we and our troops may heal up a bit. Once my men and I were finally healed up enough to at least protect ourselves, we would begin making our way towards Scotland. Lucky for me, we won't have to search for King William for very long, as I know exactly where he lives. Oh, the big bad Irish wolf has come to your home that you built out of sticks and you've decided to bar the door, eh? We'll see about that. And so began our siege of the castle. I wish I could tell you that their defenses were strong, but we took them out with relative ease. My army would begin approaching the castle walls. We brought a battering ram, but I didn't feel like spending the time to build siege towers, so we simply brought some ladders along with us. I was just ever so eager to make my way within the castle, whether that be breaking down the door, climbing the ladders, or even burning it to the ground, whatever comes first. With my axe in hand, I would be lying to you if I said I weren't experiencing at least the tiniest bit of bloodlust during this time. My blood was pumping along with my adrenaline, and I believe I had finally transformed into the butchering monster that they all had made me out to be for so long. I could see the fear in their eyes as I cut them down, swaths of men all at once. When we take this castle, I'll make sure the Undertaker gets a fair raise. With as many bodies as we began piling up, he's definitely going to earn his keep. This was a brutal, bloody massacre of the British that were guarding this castle, all for their silly little king, all for nothing. And at the end of the day, we were victorious. Finally now, with the castle under our control, we began looking for William. Turns out the scurrying little rat had ran to the dungeon. Well, that's just perfect, I thought. He even saved us the trouble of having to put him down in there ourselves. Aw, running away from the light like a cockroach, are we, old friend? Let's get you out of there. What do you say? We'll take you out in the town square. Besides, we want to make sure that everyone has a damn good view of this. I bet you never thought you'd be here, eh? Quivering in your boots, soiling yourself, while an Irishman holds an axe high above your head? Don't worry, it'll be over soon. Down with the king. Long live the emperor. Hello, hello! I just want to pop in here at the end of the video and say thank you ever so much for watching this last episode in the series. Thank you for watching the entire series. And if you're watching this a little bit later on, thank you for watching the entire supercut of the series and sticking around throughout, I think, 2, maybe 3 hours. The series is fairly long, but actually about the same length or shorter than the normal ones I do. This is actually the very first series of a different game on the channel that I've ever completed. Something different than RimWorld. If you're new around here, you may not have known that, but if you're a longtime viewer, I'm sure that you probably do. I'm glad that everyone seemed to really enjoy Bannerlord. I'm really glad that you guys enjoyed this series and my storytelling throughout the series, my narration, everything. It's really been fun. It's really nice to switch it up a bit and do something a little bit different than RimWorld, and you know, I really enjoy that. Thank God I'm doing something a little bit different, right? I'd say some people get a little bit sick of RimWorld as well, it seems. So yeah, just glad to be out here entertaining and being able to do it with a few different types of games now. If you guys have any suggestions or anything, what you'd like to see me do, if you want to see me do another Bannerlord playthrough in the future, be sure to let me know. Be sure to like and all that great stuff as well. You know, of course, that helps out, and it also lets me know that you actually enjoy Bannerlord on the channel. Thinking I might try some Kenshi soon as well. I know I've got the game. I haven't actually played the game yet. I've watched other people play it, so I'm going to need a little bit of practice first, though. But yeah, once again, thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys have truly enjoyed, and I love you guys. I will see you next time. Goodbye.